So, like my speaker before me, I'm going to start with a bit of a thought exercise. And I'm going to ask you all to imagine something, or for some of you, I'm sure, remember a couple weekends ago. So the gist is that you're at a party, friend of a friend's party, maybe a social, some other vague relation to the host, and the music it's loud, it's blaring, people are eating, singing, dancing, drinking, and you, the wallflower that you are anchored to the wall. And when someone even dares to approach you, you do a bit of this and start scrolling through emails you should have read like a week ago, or answer a text from your dad you left for like a month. And that reaction is understandable enough. You know, these are all strangers. You don't know them. They don't know you. You don't owe them your time. You have so many better things to do but this, and so many better places to be but here. And yet here you are, pretending to be busy at a house party on a weekend. And the sheer absurdity of this whole situation hits you all at once, and you ask yourself, what am I doing here? Why do I bother? Why do I even care? And so with those questions, you proceed to drift aimlessly, purposelessly, and you kill time for the sake of killing time. But until that time does arrive when you can politely exit stage left, you process this absurd performance that you're putting on, this act trying to convince all these strangers that you belong here, that you are one of them, while at the same time trying to directly interact with those strangers as little as humanly possible. This estrangement, this disconnection between you and others, it's hard to explain in words, but the best I could find is awkwardness. Like you don't belong, like you're out of place, and in my opinion, it's more than being out of place. It's like being misplaced by yourself, by the universe, by whomever, trying to jam a puzzle piece into a spot that it clearly just doesn't fit. And so this experience is, for most people, I'd like to think, ultimately ephemeral, passes with time, full of sound and fury, yet signifying nothing. Perhaps it automatically resolves itself at the end of the day when you flop onto your bed. For others, this derealization might mix with sensory overload and cause a panic attack. However, in either case, this disconnection is confined to a singular episode. It can be avoided if need be, just don't go to socials anymore. So the question I pose to you today, and I'd like for us to explore together, is what happens when this disconnection, this estrangement with your fellow man, is chronic, left unaddressed and unresolved over time. I'll begin to answer with a bit of a digression about myself, yours truly. So if you couldn't already tell from my accent or from the lovely introduction, I'm not British, I'm American, unfortunately. And, well, my parents, the important part is that my parents are neither British nor American, but they're from the Philippines, a country in Southeast Asia. Now, if you immigrated when you were young, or were like me, raised by immigrants, you might relate to this concept of living between two worlds. One familiar, homely culture within your home, and then one unknown, ironically, the foreign culture outside of your home. Furthermore, and though this next part isn't exclusive to immigrant parents, you may notice this pronounced pedagogy, this paradigm among parents to raise their kids with discipline, academic rigor, obedience to, ensure their child actually attains the future for which they immigrated in the first place. Makes sense enough. However, what comes with this strategy oftentimes also creates this concomitant aversion to transgression, this inclination to be unobtrusive and small, to not cause a scene, lest you ruin this seamless integration your parents had wanted, and then you faced your wrath at home. And so what this all does is it creates a passive, perfect bystander child, especially when it comes to their own victimization. And I can say this confidently because it happened to me when I was young. When I was a kid, maybe about 8, 9 years old. We were in the schoolyard. This other kid comes up to me, and he does the Asian eyes thing, when you pull out the corners, and starts, taunting me with these, what I can only assume now are his best and surely most honest attempts at Chinese. Now, evidently, I'm not Chinese, and in retrospect, I find it really funny. I would actually be impressed if that 8-year-old knew the Philippines was a country in the first place. But on a more serious note, I remember the panic I felt at that time. This was my first encounter with this strangeness between two people, this disconnect, this gap between me and other people. And I never told the aggressor to stop. I never told a parent. I never told a teacher who could action on this immediately. In fact, right now is the first time I'm addressing this life fact of me in public, besides rehearsals. Luckily, the torment stopped on its own. He later did apologize. But I imagine sometimes what would have happened if it didn't. What would have happened if it escalated beyond just verbal harassment? Would I have ever spoken up on my behalf? And more terrifyingly enough, would I have ever spoken up on the behalf of another person? Now, fortunately, I'd like to think I've gotten a little bit better at this talking thing, a little bit better at this speaking thing, and I try to make a habit of calling out injustice when I see it. And much of it can be attributed to Filipino cultural values of, fraternity and gratitude, debt of the soul. But I cannot deny how much impact American culture has had as well in this regard, this art of vehement protest and revolt. From the tales of the founding fathers who threw British tea into Boston Harbor, sorry, not sorry, to the 1960s with our tenacious and perseverant civil rights leaders, and all the way up till today. In just the last half year, we've seen the largest nationwide protests in American history. So this is all to say that people like me eventually find a convergence between these two worlds, between that known culture we're raised with and that unknown culture that we are inevitably raised in. And we equip ourselves with a skill set in adapting to that foreignness, adapting to the strange, and navigating those treacherous waters between those two worlds. And this phenomenon, of course, is not exclusive to my demographic. It's not even exclusive to minority demographics. In fact, I think most of you have probably, whether you knew it or not, had this skill set developed within you. When you're a kid, you've probably read a story about or watched a movie about a plucky protagonist who has to adventure into the unknown world, leave the comforts of home, and become reborn anew in the trials and tribulations of that unknown. The classical hero's journey. And so most of you, unknowingly, became your own heroes, stepped out of your own comfort zones, and journeyed into the unknown world of new lunch tables and new friend groups and new grades and whatnot. So most of us, I think, both you and I, should acknowledge this luck, this privilege in having this capability, whether by nurture or by nature, in interfacing with strangers, with the foreign, and having a familiarity with the unfamiliar. So to bring the topic back, I'd like for you to imagine or remember again. This time, you're 18 years old, starry-eyed youth, and maybe you haven't had this formative experience before, or maybe not enough of these formative experiences, but for some reason or another, you decided, yeah, let's travel 1,000 miles away from home to study in university. Who would do that? And for the first few weeks, you're thinking, okay, maybe this uni thing is going kind of all right. Things are going kind of smoothly. But inevitably, that disconnection, that uncertainty, that estrangement from other people starts looming over your shoulder. And you start to stare and look at this school system that you so longingly want to be a part of, but you just feel like you can't. You just can't. And you're forever a stranger on the outskirts, a wallflower in the corner of a house party that goes on and on. And this anxiety, might subside with time, but it might sustain itself as well. And there are going to be months and months and months of feeling out of place, feeling out of your depths, a fish out of water, all until suddenly, one day, you just give up. You give up on reassuring yourself that, yeah, I can adjust one day. And those familiar walls of self-consolation come tumbling down, revealing to you this brave new world of cold indifference. And it need not be a climactic culmination of months of struggle. It could happen to you or you or you at any point, at any time, during any act, any scene where that quotidian drudgery of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow starts to creep in. And at any street corner, the stage play can fall away. The music comes to a stop, and the spotlights shut off, and your performance comes to an utter halt. And you're left in the darkness, alone, afraid, uncertain, lost in that void between two worlds, with nothing to do but ask yourself, what am I doing here? Why do I bother? Why do I care? Why do I care about these strangers, this ocean of strangers that I don't care about and they don't care about me? Why should I care about it? Why should I care about fitting into this foreign ecosystem, this strange social syncytium, this monolith that has existed before me and will exist well after me? Why should I participate in this social machinery that'll keep on chugging and chugging and chugging, whether I've come aboard or whether I've been left at the station? Perhaps it's just best for me to pack my bags and head home. And such is, unfortunately, the tale of many an immigrant, young adult on student visa, or frankly anyone who hasn't been sufficiently equipped to handle this encounter with the absurd, with the strange, with the foreign. And it's understandable because it's human nature. It's human nature to fear the unknown. And we find ourselves unwittingly and almost instinctively disconnecting from stressful social situations. In many cases, we just drop out, as much as 30% in both US and UK universities. And what doesn't make this any better is this strange social stigma that has come about throughout history against immigrants and people who are different. This doubly redoubled otherism, us versus them, abject xenophobia, where many of us will choose to cope with our fear of the unknown by pulling away. Others out there will do so by pushing away. And so we see this genetically ingrained predisposition for the familiar, for home, perverted into a rejection of the stranger, a rejection of the foreigner. So what can we do about this? Like we said, this force of disconnection is both internal, it's external, and they stem from that same inextricable pathology, fear of the unknown. It's encoded in our DNA to stay in the cave, to shy away from fire, to fight or to fly. However, I think there is a solution, and that doesn't involve getting rid of it. Because I don't think you can. I don't think you can just pluck it out, and I don't think that if you live with it long enough, it'll just disappear. I think that's impossible, because every time you meet a stranger, every time you do something new, there will always be that fear, that uncertainty, sitting at the back of your mind. So then, the solution is not to achieve that impossible dream, not to deny it, not to ignore it, not even to destroy it. The solution, in my opinion, is to acknowledge it, to embrace it, and to master it. Because I think that's the beauty of it, that if discomfort, if uncertainty is in our fates, if it's some immutable constant that's going to be in our lives and we cannot do anything about it, then why don't we just choose to enjoy it in parallel, to recognize it, and to revolt against it, and in doing so, to live on and continue in spite of it. This idea was, in my opinion, most beautifully put by French philosopher Albert Camus, whose entire corpus surrounds the strange and the absurd, in his essay, which you might know, The Myth of Sisyphus, quote, "Revolt is the certainty of a crushing fate without the resignation that ought to accompany it." And many other thinkers and writers and playwrights before and after him have echoed the same sentiment, from Plato to Mark Twain to the common adages of today: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And if literary anecdote won't do it for you, science backs this up as well. Health psychologist Kelly McGonigal has a TED Talk of her own where she discusses how coexistence with stress and really using that stress to your advantage can improve your life quality in a variety of parameters far more than the deliberate avoidance of stress or even the villainization of stress. And lastly, there is a publication called The Tenacious Brain, where, quote, "persistence in the face of challenge," end quote, develops a part of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex. And developing this part has shown signs to lead in combating future neurological disorders like depression or even dementia. So go out there, I tell it to you all, and feel uncomfortable, feel like a stranger, but on purpose. Be afraid, but keep that fear alive so you can revolt against it. Talk to new people, take risks, learn from other cultures, face the music of our absurd condition, and choose to play it by ear. Whether you're international or a domestic student, speak up, speak out to others and with others, and speak truth to power. And hey, if the health benefits don't end up saving your life, you very well could be saving that of another, a fellow stranger. Thank you.